This webinar, Learning to Achieve Workforce Preparation Strategies, is being recorded, and we will be sharing the links with you after the webinar is over. Thanks again for taking the poll. And if you haven't already, please do so. It's in the right column. I am here to guide you with any technical difficulties you might have, and also to sort of give you a little background of the portal here and to see how you can use it. So you can use the chat box for discussion, which is going to be in the right column on your screen throughout the webinar. If you have any questions or comments, you can adjust the screen size to kind of match the Zoom level, magnification level to which you might want to see. That's best for you. And just one thing to remember in the chat box is that you have to make sure that you're sending all the chats to all participants so that everybody can see it. So not all attendees, just all participants. There is a Q&A section towards the end of the webinar, but please feel free to use the chat box in the meantime. And if you're having any technical difficulties, feel free to send me a private message. Thank you so much, and I will be handing the baton to Jesse. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Priyanka, and welcome to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for today's training, Learning to Achieve Workforce Preparation Strategies. My name is Jessie Stad, and I am the project manager for the LINCS Professional Development Center. And as Priyanka said, she'll be running the webinar today from the LINCS Professional Development Center's partner, World Education. So I just wanted to begin by giving a little bit of an overview around the LINCS Professional Development Center. The LINCS Professional Development Center, or PD Center, is an initiative of the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Career Technical and Adult Education, otherwise known as OCTE. The PD Center assists states in meeting the state leadership requirements that are set forth in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA, or WIOA, Section 223. So by leveraging available LINCS resources, trainings, train-the-trainer opportunities such as this one, states can expand their capacity to establish or operate a high-quality professional development program as is required by the law. So the LINCS Professional Development Center offers services to state staff to help them build state PD programs. Our services aim to help states use or customize LINCS resources, develop state trainers, including program-based instructional leaders, and this train-the-trainer goes to that goal as well. Improve training, delivery, and access, integrate technology, and better support local providers. So we have a lofty goal of supporting states in really a variety of activities, and this activity today is intended to help state trainers and to help more trainers in local programs understand how to help users use the Learning to Achieve courses, and in particular the Workforce Preparation Strategies course. So today's course, today's webinar, I should say, and to achieve those goals, we're going to help you build your capacity as a trainer to support teachers who may be taking the Workforce Preparation Strategies course, which is available all the time in the LINCS Learner portal. 24/7 through the LINCS website. So this webinar is aiming to do the following. We will describe how this course connects with the larger Learning to Achieve suite of courses. We'll walk through the content of the course itself, and then most importantly, we'll discuss how trainers can support participants in taking the course for meaningful learning and implementation of content and strategies. So, individual users can take the course themselves, but we hope that there will also be opportunities for facilitated, connected activities that can help people really deepen and extend their learning. So we hope by the end of today's webinar, you, the participants of this webinar, feel empowered and informed enough to support adult education teachers who may be taking this course so that they can optimize and extend their learning. Excuse me. So let's begin with a very brief overview of the Learning to Achieve suite of materials of which the Workforce Preparation Strategies course is one. So Learning to Achieve is a suite of resources designed to build teacher effectiveness in providing instruction for adults with learning disabilities. It includes self-paced online courses and face-to-face trainer-led activities. The link you see on the page describes the suite of materials in more detail, or you can just go to the link's website itself and scroll to Learning to Achieve. And I'm actually going to paste this link into the chat so that you guys can click on it, because it's not clickable in the PowerPoint. So feel free to click on that link to explore the resources in more detail. So first, I'm just going to very briefly familiarize you with the 8 available self-paced online courses. The first 4 were developed several years ago, but the content remains very relevant. I'm not going to read these descriptions to you, you can read them, but the first 2 courses, one is around accommodations, especially around testing and instruction, and the second one is around ELL learners and how to best serve them, or ELL learners with disabilities, I should say. The second 2 of the original suite of courses include neuroscience, which is all around the underlying neurobiology, and then a professional's guide, which is a little bit different in format, but is sort of a way to go through the materials. And then, more recently, in 2016, Links released 4 new self-paced online courses. These courses align with the new language and the requirements of WIOA. So the first course is on the definitions of learning disabilities, and this is a good place to start because it really sets the tone, it sets forth the new language to be used in alignment with the law. It is a good starting point because there's many different service providers that serve individuals with disabilities, and so this can provide some common ground and some common definitions. The second course is on self-determination, which is around self-advocacy and the importance of that as an approach and as a goal for working with individuals with learning disabilities. The third course is on legal issues, self-disclosure, and confidentiality, and this is very interesting, I think, just from a sort of programmatic lens. And so, you know, not only would this course be relevant to teachers who are working with individuals with disabilities, but especially for intake counselors, program managers, administrators, caseworkers. This is one course in particular that I think has a bit of a broader audience. And then lastly, the final course is the Workforce Preparation Strategies course, which of course is what we're going to talk about today. So this course was very significantly revised after the passage of WIOA to align with the new definitions for workforce preparation activities, which is one of the allowable activities in the law, career pathways, and partnerships with the workforce development system, especially one-stops, which are also called American Job Centers. So this course in particular was very impacted by the new legislation and is the subject of today's presentation. So let me get into it. So first, I'm going to give you a high-level overview of the course itself. So my assumption is that you are already familiar with the course content. If you're not, don't worry. The course, as I said, is available 24/7 in the Links Learner portal. If you're having any trouble with your Links login or password, please contact the help desk. They're very responsive. They'll do their best to get you logged in and into the course as soon as possible. Okay, so by the end of the course itself, participants will be able to describe strategies for helping adults with learning disabilities develop skills to enhance their workforce readiness and success, and identify employment-related resources available to adults with learning disabilities in your community, and explore strategies for addressing those barriers. So the course is built around 2 guiding questions. The first is, what instructional strategies can ABE instructors use to help students with learning disabilities develop skills that will support student success at each phase of the employment process? So to address this question, the course reviews skills that employers identify as essential for workers in today's economy, and generates ideas for classroom instructional strategies that would develop these skills. The course also examines the 4 elements of the career development process, as well as the instructor's role in supporting skill development related to this process. So there is definitely an emphasis here on how this impacts ABE instructors. And then lastly, this course explores instructional programs and approaches that emphasize integrated basic skills and career pathways. So in particular, it explores the 16 career clusters that are laid out by the U.S. Department of Labor. And it does make an effort to align that approach and model with the career pathways model, which may be more familiar for those of us in adult education. So the second guiding question is, what workforce-related courses are available, resources are available to students with learning disabilities? And how can the ABE instructors link these resources to instructional strategies and learner goals? So to address this, the course provides a very thorough explanation of the workforce system, or American Job Centers, career centers. So we examine the center's partners, customers, and services, as well as ideas for assisting students with learning disabilities to access these services effectively. And just a little plug for this section in particular, I think, you know, WIOA places a premium on working across the workforce system, which includes working with our partners at the one-stops. But, you know, as a former ABE instructor, that world was always a little bit murky to me. And so one of the things I really liked about this course is it very clearly explains the role of the one-stops and explains, you know, their purview and their services that they can provide both under WIOA and specifically to individuals with learning disabilities. And then it very clearly shows how adult education can interact and work and align services with the one-stop services, and the services also through Voc Rehab and other service providers that serve individuals with disabilities. So for those instructors or program managers or intake counselors or caseworkers who are not necessarily familiar with one-stops or with Voc Rehab and what they can do under WIOA, this course is a really good starting point to understanding the requirements of the law and what's allowable and what's required. So just a little plug for this second part of the course in particular. Okay, so that's the course itself. You know, I'm not going to go through, you know, the nitty-gritty content of the course. I definitely encourage all of you who haven't gone through it yet to do so. But what I'm going to talk about for the remainder of today is I'm going to walk through some ideas for facilitating a cohort of instructors through the self-paced course. So while the course itself is self-contained and self-paced, there are many opportunities for extending and deepening the learning with a cohort of colleagues through some selected facilitated activities. The facilitated activities described are just ideas that a trainer or professional developer could use to ensure that their teachers enrolled in this course have opportunities for discussion and application to your own context. So before I move on, I just want to sort of make sure that that's clear. So the idea is that individuals could take the course themselves. It's self-paced, it's online, they can take it however they like, but that perhaps there would be opportunities for you as a trainer or as an instructional leader or professional developer to convene a group of teachers that are taking that self-paced course and provide some follow-on activities around it to help them really actualize that learning. So I'm going to walk through some places where we identified opportunities for extending learning through some suggested facilitated activities. And I'm going to put, there is the dedicated chat feature as well. So as I'm talking, first of all, please ask questions. I am keeping an eye on that chat box. So, you know, as things come up, please ask questions and I'll address them both in the moment or at the end. Please also consider adding in other facilitated activities that could be used or you have used or you think might be an interesting way to think about it. Please go ahead and use that chat box and send the message to all participants. So unless there are any questions, I will move on. Okay, So, a coalition of business groups conducted a study of about 400 U.S. companies to find out what skills and knowledge employers expect workers to have in today's economy. And the exploration of these skills is really the first point, the jumping off point of this course. It provides the rationale for why this course matters and for why it's important to build, workplace readiness skills, basically. So this coalition reported their findings in a publication that was titled, "Are They Really Ready to Work? Employers' Perspectives on the Basic Knowledge and Applied Skills of New Entrants to the 21st Century U.S. Workforce," which is a mouthful. But if you would like the link, I can certainly send it to you. It's also embedded in the course. Within this, they identified the following skills as most important. I don't think there'll be any huge surprises here: reading comprehension, math, teamwork and collaboration, critical thinking and problem solving, communication, professionalism, work ethic, and information technology application. So, for those of you who are familiar with 21st century skills or for the workforce preparation activity skills that were listed in WIOLA, there's a lot of crossover here. So I see a question. Can content from the courses be incorporated into our own PD trainings so that it would be given? Yes, of course. So all of the materials available in the online courses are freely available and free to use in whatever format you would like. You can, copy and paste or send people to that course and build activities and materials around it. Those materials are freely available and available for your use however you see fit. If you are going to send users to the site itself to take the course, they will have to set up a username and profile. But, again, it's all free and freely available. So the course content, again, that I've listed on the screen, I'm just giving you an overview of sort of what that section. And then in order to help bring that course content to life, if you're going to have some facilitated activities around it, one thing that you could do for a face-to-face meeting is to consider breaking participants up into small groups. You can assign one of them, each group, a priority skill that I just listed off, the math, reading, teamwork, one of those. And then have the groups identify instructional strategies that can be used to develop that skill, to really bring it down to the classroom level. So here's some examples of how you could do that. So you could divide the class, an instructional strategy that you could use, or an instructional example you could use, is to divide a class into several small groups and then introduce them to a team assignment based on a reading selection on the topic of teamwork. After reading the material, you can assign teams to work together to write a paper or prepare an oral presentation on different aspects of teamwork. They can demonstrate their use of technology by producing a text or graphic document or preparing a PowerPoint presentation using any sorts of technology that you have available to you in the classroom. So depending on the article that you had provided, the team could address different issues such as goal setting, assigning tasks according to individual strengths and interests, setting deadlines, following through on tasks, showing commitment. So the team can decide in advance how they'd like to tackle this assignment. Once it's completed, each team can present its findings to the class and discuss the dynamics they experienced as a team to reflect upon it. The instructor can then lead a discussion about how all of this relates to an employee's success in the workplace. Other activities that you could use in the classroom could be, dividing your class into small groups and then asking them to interview business people to see how that person defines some of these key skills like teamwork. What does that employer see as a critical component of teamwork? What are examples of teamwork? So, having those students go out into the world to ask some questions in a very direct way to help them build their understanding of what these employer identified skills look like. So moving on to the role of adult education instructors in the career development process, which I'm sure is a topic that most of you and probably most of the users of this course are very interested in. Although ABE instructors are not expected to provide career counseling and education necessarily, they often do play a really important role in helping students see the connection between their academic efforts and the critical components of successful work. So in addition, many career-related materials and resources can serve as content for academic instruction. There's many ways to use sort of real-life materials and real-life artifacts in the classroom to help build lessons around real-world activities and examples. So the career development process can most easily be explained as having four major components of stages, and that is awareness of self, awareness of opportunity, preparation, and work history. And again, the course itself does describe each of these components and explains them in more detail. I'm obviously not going to do that on today's webinar. Within the awareness of self component, the course lists several resources that can be used to build awareness of self. It does that for each of the components, but in particular, we're going to talk about the awareness of self one. So for a potential facilitated activity, consider assigning or having participants select one or more of those resources identified in the course to complete. You can have the participants report out on the resource, especially with a focus on their recommendations for if it should be used, who should use it, and in what context. So, there are links within the course, and you could split, you could assign a teacher to one teacher to another, and then have them report back to others with their recommendations for use. And that's a really helpful way of kind of crowdsourcing within your teacher cohort. Okay, so integrating academic skills with workforce training. So again, the course itself describes instructional approaches that integrate basic skills and career pathways. It is all in alignment with WIOA, and there's, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of good information around career clusters, which may or may not be a new concept for teachers. There is a lot of crossover between the workforce preparation activities identified in WIOA and the skills identified by employers earlier in this course. So the WIOA definition of workforce preparation activities is activities, programs, and services to help an individual acquire a combination of, and then I'm going to list the workforce preparation activities. So first is basic academic skills, critical thinking skills, digital literacy skills, self-management skills, and competencies in utilizing resources, using information, working with others, understanding systems, and obtaining skills necessary for successful transition into and completion of post-secondary education or training or employment. And that comes from WIOA section 203. So if you or your teachers would like more information about the workforce preparation activities that I just listed, Links will be releasing 2 courses this fall on that very topic. I'm going to give you a sneak peek at some of the content on the next slide that might help your understanding of how workforce preparation strategies can be used in adult education programming. So the facilitated activity here is really that workforce preparation activities is something new under the law. It may be an area that teachers do need to build their knowledge in. You can point them in the direction of these 2 new courses that will be released this fall. You could consider, as someone mentioned earlier, going through those courses yourself and pulling out information to provide to those teachers. I think they're chock full of information, so there's a lot of kind of content opportunities for you there. Okay. Okay, so this is examples for the new course that I mentioned on workforce preparation activities. And the idea that I'm walking through is ways that you can integrate workforce preparation activities into adult education. As you heard, workforce preparation activities are programs that are building these general competencies, and so you can do it in multiple ways. So the first example is one that you probably are already doing, which is integrating workforce preparation activities into ABE, ASE, or ESL instruction. So what it says this course on this page is talking about this new course, but there's many ways that instructors can integrate transferable workforce prep activities into all level of instruction, even, simply using real-world work-related artifacts to build instructional, to build instruction is a major way, and one in which I'm sure many of you are already doing. Okay, so example number 2 is contextualizing workforce preparation activities to a particular occupation or sector. So this could just be an adult education program that's doing it, in a ABE class, or it could be in something more focused, such as a bridge program or a preparation course to a specific workforce training program. So ramping up the intensity a bit there, for those of you who are familiar with the terms IET or IELCE, these are 2 new approaches under WIOA. IET stands for Integrated Education and Training, and they are one of 3 workforce prep activities are one of the 3 components of an IET program. It's a service approach. It's about how services are organized and packaged for learners. And it basically means that programs provide ABE activities concurrently and contextually with workforce preparation activities in addition to workforce training. And then, I'm sorry, the PowerPoint got a little messed up here, so you can't quite see the boxes in the way you're supposed to, but you get the gist there that these 3 components equal IET. And then below that, IET is taking the model above IET and then adding the requirements around civics education and English language acquisition. And so those 4 components together equal IELCE. So you can really see, I think, through these illustrative examples that workforce preparation activities are a building block that can be used in many different ways and can look very different, but they are a building block that can be used across adult education services. Okay, so I know that was a lot of information and it was a bit tangential. So if you have questions, please feel free to type them in the chat, or we can answer them at the end. I'm happy to answer questions on this. Okay. All right, so I'm going to just move on a little bit to go back to the Workforce Preparation Strategies course that we are talking about today. So the content of this course, as I mentioned earlier, does give a really good overview around working with one-stops and other partners within the workforce development system. So WIOA updates the membership and required functions for local workforce investment boards. They were also required under the previous Workforce Investment Act, or WIA. Section 107 of WIOA does provide the membership requirements and required functions if anyone's interested. But basically, WIOA authorizes one-stops to provide an array of employment services and connects customers to workforce-related training and education. So WIOA places a much greater emphasis on the one-stops to achieve results for job seekers, workers, and businesses through enhanced partnerships. So the one-stop is motivated to partner with adult education providers because it enhances the services that they provide. So every local area is required to have at least one-stop where a variety of employment-related resources are made available to the public, which includes job seekers, those who assist them, and employers. So there is at least one-stop in your local area, and of course local areas vary by your local area. Many local areas have more than one-stop, but you'll be able to find them in the facilitated activities. So essentially, one-stops are employment hubs. They're a physical location where patrons can work at their own pace. They can do job search and career planning activities. They can work with one-stop staff to go through some career planning tools and review resources that are all geared towards helping them find employment. So the users and the patrons of a one-stop are very diverse and reflect the citizens of the communities in which they are located, and the services are intended to do the same. So if you were working with a group of teachers, maybe in a state or in a region or across an area, one thing that you may want to do is to use the provided link in the course, the servicelocator.org, to help those instructors find and familiarize themselves with local one-stops. If they're all in the same location, you could consider connecting with that one-stop, maybe having a field trip, meet frontline staff at the one-stop, and become familiar with their intake procedures and available workforce preparation services. If you couldn't bring the teachers to them, maybe the one-stop would be willing to come to you to do a presentation for your teachers. So I want to answer your question. You haven't seen any differences. I think I'm not going deep enough into the course itself to go through the instructional strategies themselves. The strategies in the course, I think, are specific to learning disabilities, but the intent of this presentation is really around facilitating that. So I hope that when you go through the course, you do see the specialization to learning disabilities. Okay. So the next partner that is critical when working with individuals with disabilities is vocational rehab. So, as mentioned, the one-stops are available for qualified job seekers with disabilities, but the most well-known provider of these services is the public vocational rehabilitation system, which is often known as Voc Rehab for short, since that first is a mouthful, or VR. It's often called VR as well. So the public VR system is one of the many mandated partners in the one-stop network. And VR services have to be available at least to some degree through the one-stops. So they're often available through different providers as well. So VR services can include diagnosis, like official diagnosis of disabilities, evaluation of job skills, psychological evaluations, career counseling, assistance in looking for work, of course, a job search, a major focus on assistive technology and supporting users and learners in learning how and accessing assistive technology, social skills classes, job coaches, and then there is a significant financial assistance around tuition and services. So to facilitate some activities that can help your cohort identify and work with VR and other service providers for individuals with disabilities, you could consider identifying and exploring selected VR providers to understand their services, their eligibility requirements, referral processes, contracts, etc. Because their processes and eligibility requirements will really vary by state, by provider, down to the program level. And so it's important, I think, when you're referring students to have that good understanding of what can this provider do, who can they serve, and making sure that you're connecting the right people to those services. So to help build that knowledge, you could consider bringing a representative from one of these organizations to present to your teachers, either in person or perhaps via a webinar. If that's not available, you could do your due diligence and learn more about the organization to present to your teachers. And lastly, as with the one-stops, if possible, you could consider bringing teachers to the service provider location to become even more familiar with their services. Okay. So currently, the Workforce Preparation Strategies course has a dedicated discussion thread in the LINCS community of practice in the Disabilities and Equitable Outcomes group. This thread does provide a platform to discuss and share on many of the questions posed for reflection throughout the course. So you certainly have the opportunity to post, a question or a comment of any sort on that thread or in that group. That thread is moderated by our Disabilities and Equitable Outcomes moderator, Michael Cruz. And so if you do post questions on there, a knowledgeable person is on the other side reading it and hopefully can help you or point you in the right direction if they can. So to further expand on this model, there's a couple of things that I think facilitators can do to either replicate or build upon this. So, option one is pretty easy. Have teachers post responses in the discussion thread. you can respond as the facilitator, or as I said, Michael Cruz can respond as the group moderator. You can also post your own thread that's specific to your group if you'd like. Another option is to use some of these questions as prompts for face-to-face reflection and conversation. Okay, any questions on this before I move on? Okay. So I hope that was helpful. That brings us to the end of this specific presentation on the workforce preparation strategies self-paced online course. As I said, I didn't want to go through the content of the course itself in detail because the course is available to you to go through and available to your teachers to go through at any time. I'll show you actually in a minute how to access it, but you just go to the Learner portal and you do need to register as a user. And if you're having any trouble or you can't remember your username or password or anything like that, please just contact the help desk and they'll be able to resolve whatever issues you may be having pretty easily. So again, the intent of this was to really describe ways in which facilitators and professional developers can assist their instructors in taking those courses, supporting them in taking those courses, and extending some of those learning opportunities around there. So this webinar today was the first in a series that we're having this summer, our summer training series, that will be delivered through the PD Center in the next 2 weeks. So please consider for registering for other webinars in this series or sharing information with your colleagues. I have them listed here, what we'll be going through. So next Tuesday, we'll be having a webinar around the first steps in preparing for college level math training. This is a linked training, a face-to-face training that participants of the webinar will receive access to the training itself, and we'll go through a 1-hour overview of how to deliver the training so that by the end of that webinar, hopefully they are able to deliver it either in their states, regions, or their programs themselves. That same model is going to be used with the next two, the evidence-based principles and practices for rating instruction on August 7th and the working with youth and millennials on August 10th. So again, the training materials for those face-to-face trainings will be provided to webinar participants, and the webinar itself will be focusing on delivery tips and strategies to ensure a successful training for those trainings themselves. So registration links are all available in the Links State Trainers group, in the professional development group, in the community of practice. I'm also going to have my email up at the end. If you have any questions about any of those, I can answer them. So any questions about the summer training series before I move on? Okay, so I just wanted to show folks where we'll be communicating these types of activities before. So before I do that, I have a question. Should the participants already have taken the course themselves before attending the webinar? No, not necessarily, Tessa. So basically, if you register for any of these webinars, the next 3 coming up, we will send you ahead of that webinar the training materials themselves. You'll also have an opportunity to download it during the webinar if you didn't register in advance, which is fine. So you'll have the material, the training delivery materials, and then during the webinar, you'll actually be, they will be delivered by the developer of the trainings themselves, and they'll be able to walk you through the content of the training as well as the training delivery tips. So those follow a little bit of a different model than today's. And I should have mentioned that those are going to be developed. Those are developed and delivered by the training developer. So Pam Meter, for those of you who are familiar with her and her work in math, is the deliverer and the developer of next Tuesday's math training. So we're really excited about that. Okay, so here's just a quick screenshot of the professional development group in the community of practice. First, you just want to sign into the Links community with your username and password. This is the same password that you use to log into the Workforce Preparation Strategies course. Then enter or join the professional development group, and then you'll see this page here. And then from this page, the main page of the professional development group, just click on the state trainers microgroup, which I've circled on the screen here. And there is a dedicated thread for individuals who want to further discuss this webinar, the course, or facilitating activities to support the course. We also announce other train-the-trainer activities, such as this one in that group. Okay, so I'd like to open this up for Q&A if there are any questions. Okay, I see a question here from Susan. So we are focusing on adult students with learning disabilities. Do the instructional approaches also include special education teaching strategies? So yeah, this is a question that I think sort of was referenced earlier. Yes, so the course itself is specific to working with individuals with learning disabilities. The course is not about special education instruction per se. It really is about how you embed workforce preparation strategies into services for individuals with disabilities, but certainly it is very specific to individuals with disabilities. So I think I'm answering your question with a bit of a yes and no. Someone sent me a question. We will have access to this presentation after today to share with staff, right? So if you would like this presentation, I'm happy to send you the PowerPoint. I'm not allowed to share it publicly, but you can absolutely email me, and I will share my email in the next screen, and I'm going to just put it in here, and I'm happy to share it with you. The other thing that we can certainly do for those of you who need proof of your participation today, send me an email and I can send you a confirmation that you were here. Other questions? Okay, well, for those of you who are, I'll hang out for a couple more minutes, certainly, but for those of you who don't mind, please fill out the survey for today's webinar. This survey only takes about a minute or two, and you can see the date and my name spelled there, so you can fill that out. I'll leave this up for a minute or two. Oh yeah, here I'm putting the link in the chat box. There you go, sorry about that. And I'll keep hanging out if folks have questions, just type them in the chat box. Okay. Well, again, here's my email address. If you have any questions, if you want to request the PowerPoint, or if you need proof that you were a participant in today's webinar, please send me an email. I think we'll stop the recording, but I will hang out for the next 5 or 10 minutes or so if folks do have questions. So thank you again for joining us today, for your participation, and please come hang out, talk to us if you have questions, both in the you can email me, but also please talk to us in the thread for the course itself or in the state trainers group. So thank you everyone for your participation today. Have a great day.